right, we are live.
There she goes.
There she goes.
There she goes.
Producing Music Podcast, episode 7. Episode 7. I'd count. 7 episodes in heaven.
7. No, wait. That was 7. Yeah, this is 7. I forgot how to count for a moment.
Yeah, 4 and 3.
Yeah, 4 and 3.
This is Producing Music Podcast with Mark Dollar and Cooper Anderson.
You think I do on that, you know? But yeah, Producing Music Podcasts. Check us out, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch.
Twitcher.
The Twitcher.
Twitcher.
So we actually got into a little bit of a debate right before we started this podcast today. And we were just talking about and harping on Tekashi 6ix9ine. I don't even want to say the dude's name, right? I wanted to butcher it on our podcast. But it got into a conversation in terms of the validation of our social media artists. We understand Tekashi 6ix9ine to be a SoundCloud artist and having his biggest kind of breakout songs being on that platform. I believe the first song was called Gunmo or something like that. But with that being said, we've since glorified the rapper when he's not even a rapper. You know, his new song is fucking terrible. I got better bars than 6ix9ine. And I'm just going to say it because I know how to write songs in the first place. So I believe to be a good songwriter, you have to understand, the popular trends to how we perform our music. If it's rapping, if it's singing, or if it's screaming, wherever, I'm all over it. But the fact of the matter is, he's whack as hell. And sure, he's had 2-3 cool songs, but we continue to validate somebody who not only promotes child pornography videos and freaking gang culture, but is just like spewing like just misinformation and just complete bullshit out to his fans. And you know what the saddest thing about it is, they like this shit. It's like, why can't we at least have some ideas of reform in terms of our social media artists? And why should we or should we not classify them as mainstream artists?
Well, I think the difference between, whether you're a platform specific or a mainstream is whether you can cross over to a different platform. I mean, it's not just specific to SoundCloud. You have a lot of YouTube cover artists that seem to get pigeonholed into that genre. And then when they go and drop original music, or even just cover artists in general, like not even platform specific. I mean, there's plenty of those on Twitch as well. But when they go to crossover, then their originals aren't necessarily as successful. Of course, it does sometimes go the other way, and that's how they start. And, then they're discovered and like someone puts backing into them, like Carly Rae Jepsen or whatever. Or more often than not, they just don't go anywhere, which is, kind of typical. But, so I don't know. I mean, in Tekashi 6ix9ine's case, like I wasn't following him at all. I don't really know much about him other than the first time I saw him was like on some court case, like for, he was testifying against like, somebody and that was like the big deal. And then so that was supposedly going to give him street cred because now he's in jail or whatever, or got out of jail or something. But then it's like you ratted out on somebody, so that's going to actually ruin your street cred. But now he has a song on New Music Friday with Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, which I first of all, there's a lot of misperceptions in that case. For one, he didn't go to jail for any like weird racketeering charges of sorts. He went to jail for child pornography
That's even
because of
worse.
the videos.
But
Because of the videos that he posted with some young underage girl,
yeah.
you know, performing whatever, you know, things with her on some social media platform. I don't know. I don't follow him like that. But the fact of the matter is that shit's disgusting, you know. It's like, you know, the fact of the matter is like I'm not trying to say cancel this dude, but he's whack. The fact is, he's not even an artist. He goes on podcasts with like guys like Fat Joe and says, I don't even do this for the hip hop game. It's like, okay, well, if you ain't doing this for hip hop, then we don't need to hear you. The fact of the matter is, we don't need to hear this shit. Okay, all right, it's real. But the fact of the matter is, it's not helping anybody what you're trying to promote. And yeah, for all that same sake, you know, there's many artists that fall into the same pigeonhole. And while I do love some of the aspects of those artists to come out and release songs, I just kind of think about, you know, again, like, what are we really trying to celebrate here? It's like, do we want our music to always reflect a certain type of culture? Are we always looking for our music to always reflect a certain type of violence, a certain type of, you know, misogynistic quality to the music? Like, for instance, there was one song on the playlist and it started off great. What was the song called? If I look for it real fast, it was shit. It was some dumbass song. Can't even think of the name of it. I think I wrote it down, but I was almost so mad because it was a good chorus, but then as soon as you hear the verses, it's like, you know, I don't even want to say these words. It's like pussy this and this and that and the other. It's just like, whoa, like, god damn, like, I want to play some fun music around my you know, the people I love, like, not sit here and have to turn that shit down because we're just talking about that shit. It's like, come on. It's like, I understand that, you know, these are topics that some people want to hear, but ultimately, I don't necessarily know if we should be validating these artists and validating these songs. And again, it goes down to the stream of music. It's like,
Well,
if everybody's sitting there trying to write a song about these topics, and, you know, for instance, you and I, we did the same thing. We referenced like freaking like 10, 12 hip hop songs, and one chorus that we referenced just because that's what we thought was hot as producers at the time was, it was like Second in Day something. It was like something so stupid and also so like, wow, like, what the fuck are we doing? That
well,
it
yeah, the thing is, like, the labels are pushing that, though. The labels are being like, oh, curse more. Oh, say N-word more. Oh, say, you know, like, they're like, you gotta, like, you know, be edgy with it. But, like, I mean, who's, I'm not sure who that's, like, what demographic they're pushing that towards, because it's not our demographic.
Yeah, it's not. Well, I guess it would be the younger kids because it's definitely not for me. But what's crazy about that is I talk to younger kids of all colors, of all races, and they don't care about some of these artists. Some of these kids are bent up in like more of like the YouTube like kind of things going on, like, a lot of more of the trendy things. They're not listening to Takashi 69. I talk to my nieces and nephews. They don't listen to this dude. Like, they don't listen. So it's like, I don't know who they're selling this to. Are they selling this to like a specific white market? And let me tell you something. We also know about this, and I've been talking about this all week. We know that a part of our industry, or a good part of it, is whitewashed. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know that we have prison industries investing millions of dollars into the record industry. We know the correlations of that. So it's like we see that hand in hand, and it's just like everybody's tired of it. There's kids now that are growing up listening to like Rage Against the Machine. I'm pretty sure you heard about this, as everybody's talked about it, thinking that they weren't actually Rage Against the Machine. They just thought they were just saying some wild shit just because they felt like it was the right to say it. It's like, no, there was actually a time in where we used music as a form of protest. And that's when I think music actually resonated the most with people. And what's so tricky about this now is like last week we had a New Music Friday playlist that was top to bottom songs about revolt and this, that, and the other. And while there are some great songs in this playlist, we went right back to the same narrative. I had to turn off some songs real quick because I live by myself. I don't have any kids. I'm single, but I'm sitting here listening to the song. I'm like, I don't want to hear none of this shit, like popping pussy and this, that, and the other. It's like, God, like no one wants to hear this stuff. Like that. It's like, come on, man. Like, can we stop selling the same narrative? And
Well, that's
can
the
we
thing
stop?
too. I think they're like really trying to capitalize on the Black Lives Matter thing, which is kind of messed up because like how much revenue is this actually generating for those artists? You know what I mean? Versus how much is it generating for the labels? And the other part of it is too, I got sorry, they're doing the lawn outside. It's kind of loud. But so the other part of it too is like, you got I had a huge rant on my IG story about the Grammys because the Grammys changed the category urban contemporary to progressive contemporary, and my viewpoint is that's just going to open the door for white artists to enter to that category. And if they're doing it in the name of Black Lives Matter, it's like it's kind of ridiculous. So I posted a bunch of stuff, and I posted the winners and nominees from last year. Lizzo won it, and all the other artists were black or Hispanic. And I think we're gonna see a white progressive R&B artist on those nominees this year, but. So then in that same article, there was someone was saying, oh, well, these are nice name changes, whatever, but don't get me excited until you see, black executives running companies, not just running departments. And I was reading this other article about how, black people in the label situation are like, uncomfortable when the white executives come in and like play them songs with the N-word in it. And then they're like, how do you like this or whatever? And the response to that from this article I was reading was, well, they didn't like being told how to do their culture. The flip side of that is who's buying the product. Like, you have all these hip hop artists, but where is the revenue generated from? I think it's a lot of white people. So if you have executives, you're selling a product here, and then the white executives are telling the artists how to tweak their product to sell it to the customers. I'm not saying a black person can't do that, but I'm just saying maybe that's the reason why it is like that, I'm not specifically, I'm certainly not trying to promote racism or anything. I'm just, I always try to look at both sides of everything.
I think the fact of the matter is, it just plays into the bigger narrative that we are always, having. It's just the way media is portraying, again, gang culture, misogyny, things like that. It's always being portrayed and relative and triangulated with our culture, and I don't necessarily think that that's who we are. That's never been who we are. We are, as Black people, we've always been highly eclectic people that have always advocated and always have been an agency for change. To sit here and just think that that's all we're listening to. First of all, our country, I mean, most Black kids I meet, they're not spending money on music. Like, they're not doing it. They'll go to YouTube and sit there and download the stuff off their phone. They're not buying this shit. They're not buying it. You can't tell me this. Like, I see people in these communities every single day buying this, not buying this stuff. This is the way they use it. They use free platforms, and that's the way they go about it. And for them to sit there and continue to sell this to us, man, it saddens me, because it's like we're always continuing this narrative until we break down the ideas of the infrastructure of this. Then we're always going to be at a disadvantage of this. And you're right. It's like, come on, man. I know writers that have had, their checks signed by people that have invested in multi millions of dollars into prison corporations of such, and that plays a big game in it too. It's like, I don't know. I've seen this happen for years, and this is the game that we play. So we just do whatever we can just to make music. But at the same time, you start to think about how we're playing into the same narrative, and how every producer and every songwriter plays into that same narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so on that note, I've restarted my tracking program. I stopped it because it actually kind of takes forever. But, as of last week, when the New Music Friday, which is kind of like the industry benchmark of a playlist for new music, it's like the equivalent of, for me, from Vermont, we would go to Boston because that was the closest major city, and then go to Tower Records on it was Tuesdays back then. So you go Monday night, and at midnight they would release the new records, and they'd have a whole shelf of them. So for me, the modern day equivalent of that is the New Music Friday playlist. And so starting last week after the protests, they just flooded it with hip hop, like more than usual. It always had a lot of hip hop, but now it's like, 75 to 90% hip hop versus like 50% before. So what I started doing is I started my tracking where so this week I calculated the plays from each song last week, and I'm going to do that again next week. In about a month, I'll have some good data to see how well these songs are actually performing, because I don't think there's a lot of people listening to them, to be honest. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's my theory. I'm just trying to get the numbers to back it up. But
well, here's the deal. I was going to mention this. I made a note of this to mention this. It's like, in light of, again, mentioning that past article about Apple Music and how they're premiering hip hop, I don't think it's any surprise that Spotify is premiering more and more and more and more hip hop. It's at this point, it's like, I it's like dodging, like potholes at this point, with the hip hop songs. It's like, in the first 5, 6 songs, first 4, I think. Hold on, let me see.
that's more than
It's
that.
like it's like the first 6 songs are straight up hip hop songs, and then you get to the surfaces Elton John thing, which, to be honest with you, if that song came up a little later in the playlist, I might have been like, I don't really like it. But because it was flooded with so much hip hop to start, it was like, this is so refreshing. And it is an actually great song, but it gets a little boring after a while. But just to hear it come off of like just 5 hip hop songs, it was like Jesus, like
Well, that's
this
the thing.
is
Like when I
this.
did this tracking last year, what I determined was consistently, I did it for about 2 months last year, and consistently it was the Latin music that performed well. I'm talking about percentage gains. So, as in,
Yeah,
like, week one, they gain like, well, week one doesn't count because that's like the initial level, but week two, the highest percentage gain from week one to week two would always be Latin music. Latin music would gain like 100 to 400%, and everything else would be like max 70%. So that kind of
mm,
like, and if you look at it as percentages, that kind of like levels the playing field a little bit because you get like just superstar artists. Like, I mean, this week, they had the classic money makers right now. Lil Baby and The Baby are number one and number two on the playlist. They're gonna get millions of plays because that's just what happens. They're on that level. But you have all these other artists down below. You know, let's see if they're actually gaining because I feel like that's a good measure of like people are like getting into this. If that makes
yeah.
sense.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, again, for me, the fact of the matter is, there's just a lot of trash in there too. It's like
That's for
it's just a
sure.
lot of trash. It's like
Absolutely.
some of these songs, just again, like they just follow the same thing. It's like at this point, there's no one trying to be unique with it anymore. I thought I saw, or rather heard, some more unique, things going on with it a few weeks ago.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, for me, it's just like I said, at this point when I'm going through the playlist, I feel like I'm just dodging potholes, straight up, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Um,
I had a couple noteworthy ones. My noteworthy one, I think you didn't like it, but I did like it. Was John Baptiste.
oh,
I thought it was good. I don't know.
ah,
Like that's the sort of thing I would like to see more of for like, pushing like the Black Lives Matter movement because he involved the choir. I mean, I'm just reading the notes. You can talk more about it in a second, but involving the high school kids and like the big group of thing, I thought was powerful. But that was way down on the playlist. That was like, in the 70s or something.
yeah, you're right. Now, I agree with you in terms of the song. Where I am about to harp on this song is arrangement. But before I do, I want to give him big ups for, yes, involving the high school and getting them on the record and stuff like that. My whole thing about the record is arrangement. That fucking verse is fucking terrible. It's I like come on, Cooper. You're working on that song. Think you're the producer of this song with John Baptiste in the high
Well,
school,
John
right?
Baptiste is probably producing it. I mean, that's a big
Well,
shot.
come on. Oh, but let's play
He
some
he's
hypotheticals first.
surrounding himself with yes men.
Let's play the hypotheticals for a second. Let's just play it, right? You're producing that song. You hear that verse, and you hear that chorus. What goes first?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't really listen to it. Like, I just listened to like a couple seconds of it just to hear how it sounded and like. I'm not even as familiar with the arrangement as you are.
Dude, the chorus is fucking huge with the kids in the chorus is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like it was produced so well. I just personally thought that should have started the damn record. It's like
Maybe.
if you're gonna go with that big of a record, then start with the fucking chorus.
Is that what
Sing
gospel
that-
records do though for their typical arrangement?
No, that's like some AB bullshit,
Yeah.
and that's where I was so mad about it. It was like I sat there and listened to this half-ass Maroon 5 idea with some fake ass. And this is another thing I was gonna harp on for a second too. It's like this filter vocal that didn't even have to be filtered. It was just like, come on, just bring the damn chorus. Bring it. Bring the subjectivity. Don't sit there and waste that time. Those kids deserve that. You should have gave it give the whole to me that was going into business for himself. It was 100%. It angers me because it's like, okay, you got that stage. If you're that big of an artist, if you want to prove a point, give him the whole damn song. Like, just give it to him.
Yeah.
You're gonna have 4 or 5 other songs in the playlist anyway. We already know you are, but we don't know who the high school is.
Well, maybe
so
he's,
give them the fucking chance.
Maybe he's bent out of shape because he hasn't been on TV lately. Because Steve Colbert is just shooting the show out of his house.
Yeah.
The band's on furlough. But
I don't know, man.
no, you're totally right. Like, if you're gonna make a statement with something like that, make them.
It's like We
make
Are.
them a prominent
and
part.
It's that's the song's called We Are. The cover art is fucking amazing, and it's like I gotta hear this bum ass fucking verse. It's it made me laugh. I was like, wait, this is supposed to be a big song. Okay, shit. I can't even talk about it. All right.
All right. Okay, I've mentioned one. Your turn. Now it's your turn.
Okay.
I only have like 2 to mention, so
Oh, I got so angry about that one. All right, but I'm gonna I bring up a second point with that song too, but there's also some other songs that I kind of go back and forth with talking about. Let me see. I'm just pulling up my notes here. There were some really good songs on this playlist this week, 100%. Cadillac Drive, Pink Sweat, Radio, and Price. Best song on the playlist, hands down. For me, just friggin' dope. Although I thought the song was weird, I really liked the idea of the boy band song "Get Home Safely."
Yeah,
Love
that one
the
caught my ear
idea.
too. I thought you had started a band real quick.
I know I could have, but yeah. Also,
it was like rock with like synth wave, and we had a couple N bombs in there. I was like, bro.
Anyway,
I'm like, what are you holding out on me? These secrets.
T-Pain, Get Up, another great song.
Yeah.
Whoa, the sounds are just incredible. It's very akin to 808s and Heartbreaks from Kanye West. Very akin to it. National Anthem from Dwayne. Another really cool song. Really awesome concept. And kind of getting back to this John Baptiste song, and then there was another song in there by this guy named Jack Garnett. It's like he had all these cool ideas and concepts, but his arrangement was just bullshit. It was just like you have all these sounds, but then you go into the number one, going back to arrangements. It's like we live in a world and where we are free in thought. And there's nothing more restricting to me as a songwriter by this particular point than going the same A B C B B, and that's it.
Yeah.
We don't need to arrange songs that way, people. We don't have to do that anymore. The same thing with every, like, I would say 50% of the fucking playlist, it was just start with the electric guitar and someone singing. It's like, come on. I'm not trying to be like a harper, but the fact of the matter is, it's like, what are we doing? Are we just like, it goes back to what I was saying last week. Are we just picking samples,
Yeah,
or are we
basically.
actually are we trying to just make records? Like, okay, you got someone that just makes a cool guitar line. It's like you have to understand that half of the playlist, half of the artists that you're going to be going against has the same concept. So you have to invite concept more into your production. Like concept got me. Cadillac Drive, again, you hear the concept of the record come all the way through. The same thing with Learn to Fly. I thought it got a little boring after a while, but Learn to Fly was definitely like a conceptual song. Again, going back to T-Pain and National Anthem. And there was another song by a band named Luton called Control. That was great in terms of concept. Shamir on My Own, that was another one. And there was a yeah, there was some other things. Now I'm trying to always pull the worst mix and the best mix out of the playlist. For me, the worst mix was this girl named Cash Page. I forget the name of the song, but the vocal stuck out like a sore thumb. You could hear edits all over the place. It was like, whoa, like Jesus, can we get a better edit on that vocal?
I'm gonna use that as a demo for my clients, because like, you know, I have all these clients that like haven't dropped a record ever, and they're like freaking out that their stuff isn't perfect. But like, first of all, if you have to comp like 50,000 words, you know, maybe you should practice like singing a little more.
Yeah,
But
you
but
can
if you
hear
need,
where she
yeah.
cuts.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, people put out records like this, and like, you know, if you're comping in between takes, that's what happens. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes you can comp it like super clean, but like I'm getting like the comped vocal and it's already edited. I can't do anything with that, you know?
Yeah, that's really hard to do because you're editing out like really tight blips and stuff like that.
It's
But
just
yeah.
unnatural, like inherently. There's nothing, you know, there isn't a plugin that makes it like sound good.
Now, I'm a big fan of tracking in pieces. But if you're singing a whole like phrase, like let's say if you're doing da 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 da, like something like that, like I would never break that up into smaller pieces because they're like the ear is just gonna know that you've like edited that. There's like even the slightest, the most untrained musical ear can hear that being unnatural.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. It's like, so you gotta know where to how to do that. I do that a lot with guitar too. It's like, if I'm doing a riff and where you're going really low to really high, all right, I'll do the really low stuff first and have you go through a whole pass of that, and now have you do the really high stuff just to make sure it's clean and maybe it has some cool contrasts. But there's benefits to that, but it's also some big uh cons to this as well. I know I'm harping a lot on this New Music
Oh
Friday. I'm
yeah,
just
well,
trying to
one
finish
more
up.
thing on that. I mean, you hear stories about like major artists doing that all the time, though, with like 50 takes of like each word, and they're cutting syllables and stuff. But the thing is, like, yeah, maybe they are, but like, how much of that is actually necessary versus how much are you just doing it because you can? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there's always an end goal in mind, and I learned this a lot from how I track, from how other producers and how I track guitars. Like if I'm making this analogy first because, you know, if a band comes in and says to me, "Hey, I want a really tight guitar track," then I have to go about a way of tracking that make sure that those parts are absolutely tight, which means that that automatically eliminates you just going through a whole take and just trying to nail it from there. That's not going to happen, you know? So there's parts of this that is going to sound way more unnatural. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of bands that, you know, want that tight sound or like want to be produced in that way, but not realizing, okay, you're being produced this way, but the guitars are gonna land up in this really tight space. And when they hear their guitars, they're like, wow, this is tighter than what we expected. So it's like you have to know how your editing is getting to you to the end game. And that's the big thing. You have to be able to see the end game. Like if I'm editing, like I would never edit a really good singer that understands his or her you know, rhythm and cadences and have really practiced. There's no need to edit because they've already considered it in their performance. You know, there's a lot of singers out here that just want you to bake that into production, you know, and they expect you to do those things. So again, it comes down to, again, really, if you're gonna produce your own records, because you know we know that some of these records were done in, you know, by the artists themselves. If you're gonna produce your record, which means you're gonna edit your record, which means you're gonna, you know, mix your record possibly, then you have to know where your end game is, and that's the most important thing. Um, I got one more thing on New Music Friday, and that is justifying your sounds and effects. Like, again, going back to this whole thing about, you know, just, you know, having 50% of our playlist just acoustic guitar or electric guitar and this, that, and the other. But then you have all these weird effects that are going on. Some of these things really sounded out of place to me this week, you know, while there were some records that really understood it. And I personally feel like that gap between like the songs that don't have any concept whatsoever besides what they think is hot right now and songs that have true concept, there's a very thick line between those two types of songs for me. When you put on a song with concept, it's like it's like the world just agreed with itself for a moment. You have that instant moment of just like, wow, like that's cool. Like they managed to like, you know, get the whole idea and the scheme of recording down to the kick drum, down to the hi-hat, you know, making sure that they've built the ideas of contrast and, you know, blending and masking together and figuring out what worked and what doesn't. But when you hear these songs that don't have any concept, they're just like, okay, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting. Oh yeah, this is a chorus. Oh yeah, I've heard this before. All right, next
Yeah.
song. It's like there's no. I feel like we're almost two different types of producers. Like now, it's like I feel like I won't be able to have the same conversation like that we're having right now with some of these producers on here because they don't understand the idea, the concept. Like for instance, if you're gonna have a wild ass like piano or something that's like retro and 80s sounding, like have you thought about how your kick drum is going to blend into that? What type of kick drum sound, what frequency spectrum is it going to occupy? Or did you just go into the sample pack that you just got from Splice last week and just said, okay, I'm downloading the hottest EDM kick drums and I'm just going to put that in there? What type of production are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. That's It's pretty much it.
I'm ranting this week. That's the way it feels. I'm just ranting.
Yeah, I have one more thing to kind of rant about, and then we'll wrap it up. John Prine.
Oh yeah.
Like, I personally am like the worst with like who's who and like trivia, and I feel like I kind of live under a rock, so I didn't know who he was before. But you see these artists over and over again that just blow up posthumously. Triple Extentation is on there this week.
Yeah.
And he died like 2 years ago or something?
Yeah, Juice WRLD the same.
Juice WRLD. What was it? Elliott Smith back a few years ago. Yeah. Who else? I mean, there's just tons of artists that just like blow up posthumously, and it's like it's kind of sad, really, that that's what it takes. So I think we should start a band with fake names, and then we'll fake kill ourselves, and that's how we're gonna get famous.
Yeah, I mean,
how's that for a concept?
I think that's a great concept, but I think some people have already beat us to it.
Probably.
But like the truth of the matter is, I think that is the idea of concept in this industry, which is, I think it's a terrible and toxic idea. It's like, we had to reform our industry after guys like, Kurt Cobain had killed themselves, just only because when you look at the ideas of like, it's just like this. It's like people want to see people in their lowest states. People want to, or either that, or people want to see their stars in that same light. I hear, I hate to make this contrast, but again, I follow wrestling from time to time. I have no shame in my game, but in a lot of wrestling interviews, they talk about this, and it's like, they talk about the idea of kayfabe, and where it's like they got to keep up the role. And it's like sometimes you have to understand what it means to keep up the role. So when you make a song and you make if you're making like a whole concept behind that song, you're gonna have to outlive that. You're gonna have to like kind of keep going with that concept, and that's what I think a lot of people don't understand. And so when you're writing songs about depression and suicide and stuff like that, you're in low places. I know that because I've written songs from that low place. Sometimes you got to be able to know the difference between when you're writing in that element and then writing for yourself in that regard. And that's a scary place to be. So it's like, we hear a lot of these artists, we hear a lot of these styles of artists, and we just kind of, emulate them in pop culture. And again, it's like, I think it's a bigger conversation into how society looks at these types of traits from people and how we as humans interact with them. I don't know. I mean, I heard that Juice WRLD song. I was just like, yeah, it's just another Juice WRLD song. It's another acoustic sample. At this point, it's dated. I hate to say it, but if you're just using
it's not quite dated yet. I mean, they're still doing it, but it's like it's definitely been done. It's been on this New Music Friday for like several months now. Like everybody's doing that. It's like the 2020 sound is like an acoustic or classical guitar sample and like hip hop beats.
The concept is dated, I will say.
Yeah.
The concept is 100% dated. But justify your sounds and effects, people. It's like, just think about how, you're pulling all these sounds together. That's all I try to harp on. It's like, if I got to sit here and listen to this playlist, at least try to excite me.
Yep. And that's how you produce music. The podcast.
The podcast. All right. So where we at on here? We got music news.
Well, we
So we
already
kind
kind
of
of discussed. Yeah, I mean, the main thing is the Grammys, which I already mentioned.
Yeah, there was something on here this week that I read up on, and I read up on the Scooter Braun having a $30 million investment in avatar-based virtual concerts. He's
Yeah, that they've
been
been
work.
talking about that for years now. The hologram interactive
Yeah,
stuff. That's cool.
there's a company out in LA called Wave that basically kind of has the idea of how they can, perform all these concerts and stuff like that. And then the time of COVID and where, the live concert industry is in grave danger because of, laws that are prohibiting them for having a mass amount of people in places.
Yeah,
Um,
like uh the Trump rally is like you got to sign. President his Donald J. Trumpetness is having a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on the same day that a bunch of black people were massacred. Total
yeah,
coincidence, I'm sure. But
total
if you want to go to
coincidence.
the rally, you got to sign a waiver that says you will not sue if you get the COVID, aka you're probably going to get the COVID if you go.
You're most likely gonna get the COVID for sure. You're gonna get the Rona for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, Warner Music Group worth over 16 billion after a full week of trading on Nasdaq. It seems like the stock market value for Warner Music is growing. We're not necessarily certain how that's happening. It could be those IPOs that you've been mentioning over the past few weeks. But with that being said,
Well, right
you
now
know,
Warner is
uh,
basically it's a little up from I gotta change my battery. It's a little up from where it launched.
yeah. What else is there? Lander launches creator tool enabling almost infinite numbers of sounds for producers. Um, yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that could be something that's a little different than Splice. There's been some big funding behind Lander, raising over $26 million in Series B funding in last July, over a year, of course. And curious to see what that platform does. I personally use Splice right now. Splice is really cool. I've been using it for some projects, but I do feel like you're kind of pigeonholed into some things. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. Let's see what else is there while Cooper, keeps going. Um, YouTube launches a $100 million fund dedicated to amplifying and developing the voices of Black creators and artists. YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki, if I said that right, announced the fund in a letter to the platform's users. YouTube has always been a big agency for users with their own free content and stuff like that, and for YouTube to have a bit more investment in the Black community. That's something that we can always be super proud of. So thank you, YouTube. You were by far my favorite platform. I feel like YouTube is actually the last free platform of the free world. That's just me, though.
Sorry
Cooper
about that.
probably didn't hear that.
I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah.
I just got back.
Well, I just wrapped up some music news and stuff like that. I was just talking about YouTube launching $100 million to fund the dedication of developing Black voices and Black creators and artists on YouTube and such like that. So yeah, it's just kind of wrapping that up. That was new music news. Um, so we have some questions. We could go ahead and kind of wrap it up from there. But we have one question, and this is a question, or rather a debate from me, because you sent me a text this morning that was from Greg from UBK talking about, EQing a vocal and stuff like that.
I love
So
that guy.
here's the
I
deal.
love his videos.
I love his videos, but here's my deal. So I loaded up the video and he pulls up a 4-band EQ and he's like, I just don't like, and it's just like, all right. First of all, it
First of
brings
all,
me
you
to
have
the
to watch.
question.
You have to eat some magic mushrooms before you watch the videos to get in the vibe.
Yeah, because he's definitely on that vibe. You can tell. It's like, yo, I
Drop
feel
some
like I
acid.
was trying to.
Yeah.
I felt like I was trying to. He was like trying to be like Soul Brother Number One. It's like he was acting or something. It's like, dag, dude, we just talking about EQ, dog. But anyway, going back to it, it brings me to this question: to EQ a vocal or to not EQ a vocal? Tis the question. And if so, how much? For me, I'll start. I've been ramping all day, so I might as well talk about this a little bit too.
That's right.
For me, it comes down to your resource. It's like if you got a great sounding vocal, or if you have a bad sounding vocal, you have to kind of placate the idea of the vocal towards the production. So if you have a jazz song and you recorded the vocal on like some dynamic mic, of course you're going to have to EQ that vocal a little bit because you picked the wrong mic. Because that microphone is probably not going to have as much presence as something like a condenser microphone. With like recording in a bad room. If you have a great sounding mic, and I've seen this happen so many times with so many hip hop artists, I can't even tell you. But they'll buy a really nice mic. They'll go, not even knowing what they buy. They'll go to like Guitar Center and be like, yeah, give me one of those Neumann mics or something.
Give me the most
something
expensive
like that.
thing you got.
Yeah, give me the most expensive thing you got. And usually they don't even know how much that is because Guitar Center does carry like, what is the Manley mic? I know they carry that, and that's like a $5,000.
Manley reference mic, yeah.
Yeah, the Manley reference, the Gold reference, I think they carry. But yeah, that's at Guitar Center, and when
Even
they see
though
that
the black one
like,
sounds better, but
yeah,
for
the
like
red
less
one
than
sounds
half the price.
Yeah, but they'll go in to get like the Neumann, and usually what they get is like the TLM 103, which is by far the worst of all the Neumann mics, period, in the story. It's bright. It has no low end. The capsule is shit. And it's not reflective of any flagship Neumann microphone at all. And I don't even think Neumann can top what they made back in the 60s and 70s because the caps were different, stuff like that. So people buy the name of Neumann and they just buy shit now. It's like I'd rather get something from this company named Aston. This is the Aston Spirit, like $300 microphone.
I have heard
dope.
There's a Neumann TLM 107 now that's actually pretty decent. I'm working with a girl who has one of those, and it's pretty good. But I mean, I'm a Lauten guy. I'm all about the Lauten, and that actually kind of goes to what you say. The reason why I like it is plays into what you're talking about because the Lauten has the multi-voice switch, so you can kind of switch up the EQ right on the mic. You can make it, either neutral is like the gentle, the regular mode. Forward, which is the mode I have it in right now because I like the way it sounds in my voice, is like more bright and present, and then the gentle is more dark and like warm. So just those three
Yeah.
modes right there, and then you can also they have this particular one. This is the top of the line Loudon, and they have different slope low cut filter on it, so that
Yeah.
adjusts the sound as well. So if you do the forward mode with like the steep low cut, then it's similar to like a C800G, or if you do the gentle mode with like the more gentle low cut, then it's more like a U47, and then all the in between. You just kind of mix and match however you want it, and make it sound good for the song and the
Yeah.
singer.
Yeah, that's pretty much the key. It's like you pretty much will get into doing a lot less EQing if you pick the right vocal mic to start. And, we can get all scientific and talk about the capsules, but it's just knowing the microphone, knowing what it's going to do to the vocalist, and or how it's going to capture the vocalist, and making decisions from there. It's also good to buy a really, going back to the whole Guitar Center thing with the whole Neumann thing. It's like you'll be able to just if you save some more money and get something like a Loudon, or you go and get something that's multi-pattern but has a few different settings on it. Like I know Aston has something similar to that. I don't know what microphone is called, but it's really cool too. There's also these microphone modelers out there, like the Slate microphone, which I personally think is an actually good investment if you're just looking for a microphone just to be able to capture a different array of tones and be able to add different characters very quickly to the vocal. The key of the matter is you just have to make sure that you're picking or making the right choice in the vocal towards the production. You always have to think about it in two steps: how it's captured and how is it lending towards the production. So if you find that you buy that microphone, just to kind of finish that Neumann analogy, if you find like that really great condenser, but you put it in a room that's highly untreated and super boomy, hell yeah, you're gonna have to use some EQ. But let's talk about if we had a good sounding vocal that was already in the mix. Like for me, like the most important thing is just getting the vocal to be as intelligible as possible. And I find that compression actually brings me to that bridge a little bit faster than using EQ. What people don't realize about a vocal is that it's highly dynamic. A vocal is just as dynamic as a drum. Like there are people that have like S's and P's and plosives that are just as loud as a drum, believe it or not. You could see that in waveforms too. With that being said, like I find that compressing the vocal brings me a lot closer to a finished vocal sound before I touch an EQ.
Also, on that note, too, I mean, there's something as a singer you can work on as well with like with your mic and recording technique. Like if you're belting in a big note, you back off the mic a little bit, and if you're doing a quiet note, you get really close and intimate.
Yeah, exactly. There's certain ways that you can absolutely. I think that's a whole other conversation. Like vocal performance, I think a lot of people just kind of look for a microphone to do the most work for them, and I always try to remind vocalists that, like for instance, like if like I open my mouth more on the microphone, that creates more intelligibility. Like I can, you know, turn myself to the side a little bit, or maybe go in omni mode to kind of capture more space between the vocal. That's a sound that I sometimes wish I heard more of in productions. There's sometimes
I'm actually using Omni mode on this mic now for recording this because I move around too. So if I move around a little bit, it'll still capture it like I'm not like focusing on performing a vocal right now. I'm like talking to you and trying to do this
Yeah, exactly.
podcast, so I'm not trying to worry about where the microphone is and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's another big thing about it. It's like if you have a singer that is like super animated, you might not want to use like the cardioid pattern. You may not want to do that at all. You want to put that in Omnia. I think a lot of engineers kind of forget that. They think cardioid is just like a baseline standard. But
And the other thing
sometimes
about Omni too is you don't have the proximity effect.
yeah, you don't at all. So yeah, I'm a big advocate
But
for going in
the
Omni
downside,
sometimes.
the downside of it is that you're gonna get what's behind it too. So if you have you can hear it on my microphone right now. I can hear my room because this isn't a very well treated room. It's basically a box, so I'm hearing a lot
Yeah.
of reflections. Just because it's like
Yeah.
it's wood walls or whatever.
Sometimes for me though, that's something that I look to have. A lot of times when you get into a DAW, you're having to create that amount of space in it anyway. So it's like, of course, if I could get the best of the world of like the close cardioid sound with getting some back reflections, that's only going to help the ear to identify what's happening in the mix a little bit more. And I like hearing that sense of identity and sense of room. Sometimes I'm saying sometimes, not all
Yeah,
the time.
I wouldn't trust engineers in general to I wouldn't if I didn't know the engineer, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody.
Of course,
But
of course,
yeah,
and
exactly.
I also think that's that certain incumbent fear of like, yeah, like for instance, I was doing one recording and the engineer that I was working with, it was actually for that Eric project a few years back, and he was like, how while I was being on that project, I was calling in on different types of singers and all types of stuff. So I was really going for it. While where we went to this one studio, and the dude is just trying to give me some like super baseline stuff, vocals. I'm like, I had to tell him, I'm like, yo, I want this to be like a coincidental recording, and sometimes you want that. You want something. There is like a terminology that older producers do use to explain coincidental recordings. Like for instance, Drake does that all the time, and where he'll use, like his producer will use an iPhone to capture a piano, as opposed to like rigging up a MIDI keyboard or actually miking a piano. That's more of a coincidental recording.
Like
So
unorthodox
some
kind of.
yeah. So for me, there is some beauty inside of that, but you have to know when that works versus when that's not going to work for you at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Word. Well, anything you would like to end off the podcast with this week, Cooper?
One more note on the vocal thing. I've read that Travis Scott, one of the biggest hip hop artists, he'll actually like put a blanket over himself and he'll basically create like a micro room within himself and the microphone to get that like super tight effect. But I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
You could do that with Omni, and then you wouldn't have that issue with the reflections.
I think the closest sound that I've ever heard is SM7B. SM7B is frighteningly close. And that's if anybody has ever said to me, I want the closest vocal sound possible, that's the mic I'm going for right from the start.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna use a condenser. I'm just give me an SM7B.
And that's so directional, you're not gonna pick up much of anything else that's not right in front of it anyway. That's the hypercardioid.
It's barely picking up what's in front of it.
Yep.
So that to me is my choice for anybody that's saying to me, you don't have to put anything over that. In metal, the guys just hold the mic straight like this, like from the metal grill, and put the like right on their lips and just go right there.
Yep.
That's a really close sound. And the metal is frightening, you know?
Oh yeah.
Producing Music Podcast, people.
.com.
.com.
Check us out. We're here every week with tips, news, and bashing the New Music Friday list.